Long weekends are great, especially in the summer. People are often mentally checked out by Friday afternoon anyways. We were pretty busy here at Rebel News working on salvaging the Tommy Robinson speaking tour, but I think normal Canadians were just taking a bit of a relaxing break, and Ottawa journalists, well, they would have gone home even earlier because really there's not a single MP or cabinet minister in Ottawa, which is exactly what the government was counting on when they released an astonishing report on Friday afternoon. It's this one. It's published by the Department of Justice. So that's Minister Arif Virani, the Hamas supporter, Justice Minister. The report is called A Roadmap for Transformative Change, Canada's Black Justice Strategy. Black justice? I think Canada should be more interested in colorblind justice, don't you? I mean, the image, the personification of justice is the statue of Lady Justice. And the whole thing about the statue is she's wearing a blindfold. She's not looking to see who the parties in any dispute are. She follows the law no matter who's suing whom. No fear, no favor. Colorblind. But the Justice Department now is calling for black justice. It's written by Akwaze Owusu-Bempah, who is a professor, and Zilla Jones, who I think is a writer. I couldn't find Owusu-Bempah's social media, or maybe he's too smart to make it publicly available, but here's a taste of Zilla Jones. I'll just read a handful of them, just so you know who's making our black justice strategy in Canada. Here's one. I don't want the Queen to apologize for the British royalty's involvement in African slavery. I want her to resign and return the wealth, decolonize. Doesn't sound like she's much of a historian. Of course, the British Empire did more than any other empire or country in history to end slavery. Not only did they criminalize slavery, they dispatched the Royal Navy to seize any slave boats. For 50 years, the West Africa Squadron stopped, over 100,000 slaves, freed over 100,000 slaves, captured 1,500 boats. She doesn't know her history. I think she might be a little bit racist. She calls people racist pretty much full time, by the way, especially conservatives. Here's another tweet. Jason Kenney, one of the biggest racists in Canada, is resigning. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. I have my differences with Jason Kenney, but calling him racist is astonishing and false. I mean, she hates anyone who's conservative. Duh, of course she does. Never vote conservative. Do you want someone like that writing a nonpartisan justice strategy? Like I say, she's extremely partisan. Here she is saying, sad to see you and Poilievre both being the same kind of a-hole. Like I say, super partisan. Here's a little bit more from her. She says, yeah, Poilievre is actually worse and more dangerous. There's hundreds of these comments. Obviously, she hates Rebel News, and she thinks that any visible minorities who like Rebel News, and by the way, that's quite a few, she thinks they're not real visible minorities. That sort of sounds racist to me, doesn't it? But here she is. She says, that was my problem. A person I think is white purporting to repeat Rebel News talking points as coming from Indigenous people. We have a ton of Indigenous supporters. We have people who are Indigenous who work for us full time. Sorry, we don't have her approval to be conservative. Oh, did I mention? She really hates us. Then why the association with fascists, Rebel News, etc.? Do you want someone who's such a wacko in charge of any sort of justice? She's clearly not fit for the role. I'll just read one or two more. As long as it's not the racist garbage on the Rebel. Just to keep in mind who Trudeau hired to write this crazy, insane report, so insane that he released it on a Friday afternoon on a long weekend. I mean, let's just turn straight to the craziest part of the report, okay? I mean, there's a lot of crazy in it. They really want a race-based justice system from police to courts. But the craziest part is reparations. You know what reparations are, right? These days, it means paying people for something done wrong to them as a collective. Like in the U.S., where reparations is mainly talked about, the idea is to pay reparations for black slavery. Of course, it's very hard to do that because there is no one alive today who was a slave. And there is no one alive today who was a slave owner. And then, of course, there are many black people who came to America since slavery was abolished, and it doesn't really make sense to pay reparations to them. And there are many white people and other races who came to America since slavery was abolished, and it doesn't really make sense to make them pay reparations. And you might say America paid in blood for its sin of slavery, with over 600,000 dead in their Civil War, which was largely over slavery. By the way, there were only a total of about 400,000 slaves sent to North America. I'm not downplaying that. One slave is too many. But America paid in blood for its sin of slavery. You should go to the Lincoln Memorial and read his second inaugural address on the subject. By the way, there are more than 40 million Black people in America today. It's the best country in the world to be Black. If you disagree with me, tell me a country that's better. I think Canada might be the only place better. And what do you do, by the way, if you're talking about reparations, if someone is half Black, like Barack Obama? Does he pay reparations to himself? And remember, Barack Obama's mom was white and his dad was from Kenya. So he wasn't a descendant of slaves. Same thing with Kamala Harris, actually. Her mom is a Tamil Indian. Her dad is from Jamaica. He's Jamaican Irish, born overseas. How does she fit in at all? And hang on, aren't we trying to get away from racism and judging people by race? Isn't it a really bad idea to put people into categories and give them benefits or penalties based on race? Isn't that the whole reason they're talking about reparations in the first place? Because racism was bad? And of course, you're probably thinking this whole time, Ezra, what has this got to do with us as Canadians? That's American stuff. We didn't have slavery here. Slavery was banned decades before Canada even became a country. We were the destination of runaway slaves on the Underground Railway. That's what they called it when slaves ran away from the South. We were where slaves came to be free. This is some U.S. thing grafted onto Canada. By the way, in the report, they actually go on and on about George Floyd. That's an American story. Why should Canadians pay for an American issue? So obviously just an attempt to gin up some dollars. There were a small number of slaves in Canada a few hundred years ago. It's true. They were mainly Indian tribes who took other Indians as slaves in war. The Mohawks, for one example, the Haida. There was a lot of slavery in the First Nations for military purposes, for economic purposes. All of that was stamped out literally 2 centuries ago. But look at it. Look at it on page 38. I just want to show it to you with your own eyes so you don't think I make it. I got to read it. I'll just read the sentence. Recommendations. Reparative justice. Now, you and me think justice is he punched me in the nose. That's a crime. He broke a contract. I'm going to court. Something that involves you. Something bad happened to you. And we might think that, there's some, if they burn down your garage, they got to build you a new garage. That would be like a compensation. But they're not talking about anything that happened to you. They're saying because of what they claim Canada was hundreds of years ago, certain classes of people today get money. Nothing happened to you. They call it reparative justice, which is a made-up word. It's a medium-term goal, by the way. Let me read it. Medium term. Establish a committee of Black justice professionals. Oh, let me guess. It's going to include the authors here. Academics and community leaders to study options for reparations to Black people for enslavement, segregation, and racially biased laws. Are you serious? Black reparations. I saw a census of Black people in Toronto from a couple hundred years ago. There were 16 Black people in Toronto. This is not a thing. There were more Black people working on this report demanding reparations than there were in Canada to get reparations 200 years ago. But reparations for what? And for whom? The vast majority of Black people have come to Canada in the last generation. This is not a true policy paper. This is a bank heist. This is not a genuine act of reconciliation. Like I say, I think Canada is probably the best country in the world to be Black in. Maybe the United States could claim that, but you tell me a better place.